Board of County Commissioners acts as a quasi-judicial body when it hears requests for rezoning and conditional use permits. Applicants must provide competent, substantial evidence establishing facts or expert witness opinion testimony showing that the request meets the zoning code and comprehensive plan criteria. Opponents must also testify as to facts or provide expert testimony whether they like or dislike a request is not competent evidence. The board must then decide whether the evidence demonstrates consistency and compatibility with the comprehensive plan and the existing rules in the zoning ordinance, property adjacent to the property to be rezoned, and the actual development of the surrounding area. The board cannot consider speculation, non-expert opinion testimony, or poll the audience by asking those in favor or opposed to stand up or raise their hands. If a commissioner has had communications regarding a rezoning or conditional use permit request before the board, the commissioner must disclose the subject of the communication and the identity of the person, group, or entity with whom the communication took place before the board takes action on the request. Likewise, if a commissioner has made a site visit, inspection, or investigation, the commissioner must disclose that fact before the board takes action on the request. Each applicant is allowed a total of 15 minutes to present their request, unless time is extended by majority vote of the board. The applicant may reserve any portion of the 15 minutes for rebuttal. Other speakers are allowed 5 minutes to speak. Speakers may not pass their time to someone else in order to give that person more time to speak.
Good evening and welcome to the August 2nd, 2018 zoning meeting of the Brevard County Commission. We do have a quorum, so I'll call this meeting to order. Commissioner Isnardi's on her way. There was a traffic accident. She sent a text and said she'll be here as soon as she can. And as we take a moment of silence, maybe we can pray for those people involved in the accident also. Thank you. Commissioner Smith?
Join me in the pledge, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We do not have any meetings for approval tonight, but we do have 2 consent agenda items. I remembered Commissioner Barfield. If I could have a motion to pass the consent agenda.
So moved. Second.
Motion by Commissioner Smith and a second by Commissioner Barfield. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes 3-0. We are moving into our agenda items. Mr. Gioni, you're here. There you are. And were you requesting a table of your items, sir? Commissioners, is that your pleasure? It's not an automatic table, so I'd have to have a motion on this.
So moved. Second.
Motion by Commissioner Smith, second by Commissioner Barfield. All in favor say aye. Aye. Thank you, sir. We will see you October 4th. Is that good with your motion?
Yeah, you need to
Okay.
include that in the motion, October 4th.
I'll include October 4th in my motion.
Second holds, and our unanimous vote still holds in also. We are moving into items, and we're going to start with item 1, which we do also need to make a motion to table also. Can I have a motion to table item 1?
So moved. Second.
Is that to September 6th?
September 6th. Do we need to read the item first, or is it okay to just table?
I think it's okay.
Okay. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes 3-0. We can move right. Item 2 is already tabled. I can pass that by. Item number 3.
Yeah, item 3 is a proposal by Julian and Martha Goldsmith requesting a change of zoning classification from GU to RU17 on a property that's .33 acres in size located at 3165 Ernest Sands Road in Rockledge.
I'd like to make a motion to approve that request.
Motion, motion by Commissioner Smith, second by Commissioner Barfield. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Oh, we're all here. Passes 3-0. This could be a very quick evening. Item number 4.
Item 4 is a proposal by MHE LLC, represented by Mike Erdman and Sharon Harrell, requesting a small-scale comp plan amendment from neighborhood commercial to community commercial on a property that's 1.21 acres in size, located on the south side of 520 in Merritt Island.
Thank you, ma'am. I do have one card on this, Sharon Handel. Is this for questions? You're good?
She's representing the applicant.
I think, okay. Commissioners, what's your pleasure?
I have no problem with this, and I'd like to make a motion that we approve the change from or small-scale, request a small-scale comprehensive plan amendment from NC to CC.
I have a motion
Second.
and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Passes 3-0.
And the next item is item 5 is a companion rezoning from RU17 to BU2 on the same property at the same location.
Okay, I'm making a motion to approve BU2 zoning classification and agree to granting the county an easement for stormwater and future stormwater utility as agreed to by the applicant in the Myra meeting.
Motion and a second.
Second.
Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Passes 3-0. Item number 6.
Item 6 is a proposal at 1322 Clear Lake LLC, represented by Michael Dreyer, requesting a removal of a binding development plan in a BU2 zoning classification on a property that's 1.21 acres in size, and a change of zoning classification from BU1 to BU2 on a property that's 0.02 acres in size. That property is located on Clear Lake Road in the Cocoa area.
Commissioner Barfield, did you want to make comments?
Okay, so there's two different parts of this, correct?
Yes, sir. We do have one card.
Okay.
There is. They're requesting the change to remove the binding development plan on the most of the parcel, and then there's a small 5-foot strip along the southern property line that retains an old BU1 zoning, and they're seeking to make that consistent with the rest of the property.
See comments first.
Mr. Michael Dreyer?
No, that's not mine.
You're good.
I'm good. Good evening. My name is Michael Dreyer. I'm the broker-owner of Dreyer & Associates Real Estate Group in Indian Harbor Beach, Florida. I'm here today to request the lifting of the binding development plan on the BU2 zoning that's in place. Most of the property surrounding the property is BU2. None of the other zonings have a binding development plan on them. So the gentleman that wants to use the building is Mr. Mike Milford. Mike has been in the area for over 42 years. He runs a Play Action Sports. It's a high-end fishing and tackle company, and he wants to use the property for small sales and small manufacturing. And we were told after extensive meetings with the P&Z people here in the county that we needed to have that binding development plan lifted, and it was mentioned to us several times. There was no reason why it was ever put on that. So again, we're here today to ask that to be lifted so Mr. Milford can use the building for its intended use.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, I'm good with it. I make a motion to remove the BU2 restrictions in the BDP and keep the other conditions. And do I need to do two separate motions? Okay. Second part of it is I move to approve the BU2 zoning request.
Second.
Motion and second. I have one quick question, Commissioner Barfield. There was one part in the BUD that was as far as access from Clear Lake Road. Will that be any kind of conflict with this property if we remove the plan? I don't know why the BDP was put on. Are you good with that?
Yeah,
or-
I'm good with that. I mean,
Okay.
this was because of the document shredding facility that they were trying to put in there.
Okay.
So,
Thank you. I have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Of course not. It's all passed. Thank you, sir.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, and items 7 and 8 are companion applications, so I'll just read both into the record so you can discuss them together. The proposal is by Vinings Palm Bay Investment LLC, represented by Tom Cabrizio and Bruce Moya, requesting a small-scale comp plan amendment from residential 15 to community commercial on a property that's 3.43 acres in size, located on the east side of Wickham Road. just south of Jordan Blast. And then the companion application is requesting a change of zoning classification from RU 215 to BU 1 and replacement of an existing BDP.
Okay, I do have a card on this item, Mr. Moya. Moya? Moya. Bruce? Hi.
Thank you. Good evening.
Thank you, sir.
Madam Chairperson, Commissioners, staff. You probably are familiar with this property. We came before you for a rezoning and a land use to take this from industrial to residential. Since then, the property has been sold, and the people that want to develop it want to have a commercial component to it. They're going to substantially reduce the amount of multifamily units on the remaining of the property, put in like preserve a bunch of the oak trees that are out there, build a nice pond and common area, and then take out these 3 acres for commercial to kind of continue what's to the north. One of our proposals in the binding development plan is to guarantee that we will provide an easement so that the commercial piece can go to the north and get out at the signal. So unless you have any questions, I'm here.
Thank you, sir. We're going to vote on both these two together.
They need to be separate motions. I just wanted you to talk about both the future land use change and the zoning.
I do have one question, Mr. Moya, on the item number 8. Would you consider maybe putting a restricted use if you overload the capacity on that road? I think certain businesses could overload the road. And I have a feeling from what you're doing, it wouldn't make any difference. I was just thinking if a gas station went in or businesses with drive-throughs, you might have a capacity situation on the road.
Yeah, obviously, we don't know what's going to go there, so, when we get to that point, we would do those necessary traffic studies. We envision it being, cut into 3 lots, and we would do, 1 acre parcels for whatever kind of uses are kind of typically in that area, whether it be restaurant or whatever. I don't think there's any, of course, you never know if a gas station might come along and say, I really want to be there, but I haven't been authorized to change what our request is at this time, but we would definitely work with staff if there was any traffic issues as far as access and any improvements to Wickham Road, if it was warranted.
Madam Chair,
Yes, sir.
I have a concern because this is my district, and in the past, we've talked about the density of the traffic. And I like the idea of making that commercial. That will limit the amount of vehicles from if we had more houses there or apartments. But I think it needs to, I would like to see a stipulation there that you restrict gas stations and drive-throughs from there, because that could really overload that road, and we're really pushing capacity on that section of road now.
Yeah, I understand that. If you remember when we first came on this piece of property, the overall piece of 30 acres, it was zoned industrial, and the traffic count was extremely high. And when we reduced it down to residential, it reduced that traffic impact significantly.
And that's why
And that was when we were proposing like 450 units. We're only proposing like 275 on the remaining portion. So we're reducing it even further. And to have some small commercial, we don't feel that it's going to have an impact, a negative impact, any more so than if it develops as a 30-acre industrial park. So I don't think they would be, I don't think they would like to limit it to say they couldn't have like a drive-through restaurant. I don't think that would be something they would, I'm sure that's probably something they would desire. So I don't know if I can authorize to say we won't want that. So I think that we've reduced the traffic significantly, and we've done the studies that to back that. And I think because of the rezoning, they gave you worst-case scenario of what the traffic might be on this property if it was, every super high traffic generating use that could possibly be done. Is that reality? Probably not. But if we do, when we get to that point, we'll be doing our traffic studies and working with staff to, if we need to put in, whatever, turn lanes, add a lane, whatever needs to be done. So I'm hoping that because we reduced it so much that we don't think it's an issue that we're asking to go back to a little bit of commercial.
And I really like the fact that you have reduced it, but I'm really concerned about that parcel, and that's right on that bend, that if you had a high use there,
Yeah.
a turn lane might help. What, staff, what do you think about that? Because I'm concerned, I really am, about the traffic density there.
And that's one of the biggest reasons why we're doing a joint access agreement, to make sure we're moving all that traffic all together to that one traffic light. So, it doesn't have, you won't have a lot of movement, at in the parcel. They'll be able to go to that light, to come in and out of, to hopefully reduce the impacts. As well as we're going to be having a connection, a pedestrian connection for the multifamily units, so they won't have to even drive to get to those uses.
Well, that's a good point.
Commissioners, there's a couple of concerns that we do have. First, while there is a reduction in the total residential count, and thus there will be residential traffic reductions that are associated with that, we don't know right now what the commercial component will do to that, because we don't know what it's going to be. I can tell you that drive-through restaurants and convenience stores can have huge traffic volumes associated with them. In addition to that, one of the concerns that we have is that if the site results in justifying a traffic signal at that location, there will be a desire to have a signal, but it will be too close to Jordan Bless Boulevard to meet the spacing requirements. And so we have a concern about that. And that would have a pretty detrimental effect, we believe, on Wickham Road. Mr. Moore is correct that the traffic studies would be needed and would be used to try to deal with those, but ultimately the impact on Wickham Road would be there. They would, at that point, have expended a pretty fair amount of money trying to move down the road, so to speak, in the development process. And so those are the concerns that staff has regarding the proposal, is increased traffic on Wickham, and that could easily exceed the reduction that the residential count would suggest might be taking place.
And I'm no traffic engineer, but that's my concern, too. Would you be willing to table this and come back and talk with me with your folks?
Yeah, I think that'd be best, because I'm definitely not prepared to address this in this extent.
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay. Is that a motion to table, sir?
Yes. I'd like to make a motion to table.
Motion and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, passes.
Just for,
4-0.
To what?
Madam Chair, for a point of clarification, is tabled to the next meeting?
Yes, next zoning meeting.
Will that give you
Zoning
enough
meeting.
time, Bruce?
When is that?
September 4th? 6th?
Mr.
September
Moya, if
6th.
you would keep me in that loop.
6th? Okay,
If you
And I'd
keep
like
me
to-
in that
Be
loop,
ready.
too, it'd be great.
okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Madam Chair, that was item 7 and 8.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay,
They
thank
go
you.
together. Thank you. Okay, item 9.
Item 9 is a proposal by Merit Square Realty LLC, Merit Square CH LLC, and Merit Square Nassim LLC, represented by Philip Knorr, requesting a conditional use permit for trailer and truck rental in a BU1 zoning classification. The property is 5.38 acres in size, located at 777 East Merritt Island Causeway in the Merritt Island redevelopment area.
Thank you. We have a number of cards on this. Commission would go ahead and go through cards. Mr. Cal Connor. Maria Sagalio, you'll be next.
Good evening. I'm Cal Connor. I represent U-Haul. I have a couple of handouts to provide for the board. Is it okay to bring them up?
Thank you, sir.
I'm currently under contract, my company is, with the Merritt Square Mall to purchase what was formerly, I believe originally, the Publix shopping center that was behind the mall. It's actually at the entrance to the Veterans Memorial Park, which I'm sure you're all familiar with. It's an old dilapidated building that's been sitting there vacant for many, many years. What we're intending to do, as you can see from the handouts, what we're looking to do is open a self-storage facility at the location, which I already have the zoning and everything that we need for that. What I'm here tonight for is a conditional use to be able to rent U-Haul equipment from the same location. Now, I need to preface that a little bit because when I say U-Haul equipment, I'm not talking about the typical box truck that you're used to seeing going up and down the road. I'm looking at putting cargo vans and pickup trucks at the location only. That's not to say, I want to be straight up, that's not to say that a box truck will never show up on the property. We're a large company. Customers come into the area from outside of the Merritt Island community, and they're going to see U-Haul, and they're going to drop off. I know it's going to happen, as well as anybody else in the room. So we have set in place a way that when the equipment does come in, we'll make sure and pull that equipment back out. So the only equipment that will be staying at the location would be the cargo vans and pickup trucks only. With that equipment that we're assigning to the location, we actually have set it up so that we will be putting military imaged only vans and pickups on site assigned to complement the Veterans Memorial Park that will be right behind us. As you can see in the handouts, I have some artist renderings of the design we're looking at putting on the building, which again will complement the Veterans Memorial Park and the entire community, and to kind of blend everything together. I do understand the vision of the county and Merritt Island in what they're trying to do with that area right there. They're trying to keep it very military themed. They're trying to keep it as more of a downtown area up and coming for the Merritt Island community. So what my company is doing, we're trying to blend in with what's already there and with what the vision, from what I understand, is. So what I'm looking for is to be able to put the cargo vans and pickup trucks assigned to the location, as I said, and other equipment as it comes in be afforded an opportunity within a reasonable amount of time to remove that equipment over to one of my other locations. The agreement that we made in the prior two meetings that we've been to was 72 hours would be a reasonable amount of time that my company could come in and remove the equipment. Hopefully we'll get it within 10 minutes of it being there, but we being realistic, there's holidays, there's weekends, there's whatever, so 72 hours is what we had agreed to remove any other equipment that lands at that location.
Thank you, sir.
And Madam Chair, I should clarify, in your packet you have the Planning and Zoning Board's recommendation, which includes 11 conditions that I believe Mr. Connor has previously agreed to. We asked them to work on some revised language for condition number 4 in that list regarding landscaping, to have it become something that's more clear and enforceable. So they submitted some revised language, and that's in your package as well for that one single condition. And since then, they had a community meeting with the adjacent neighbors who submitted a request for the consideration of 2 additional conditions. And I'm not sure where the applicant stands on agreeing to those.
If I could respond to that, I'm not against the additional 2 recommendations, with the exception of there's some language within them that would need to be changed, but the intent behind them, I'm in agreement with.
Thank you, sir.
I think the intent is just to park the trucks on the west side of the building and to put the kiosk on the west side of the building.
Are you good with that, sir?
I'm good with that. Again, with the language of it, I think what we're referring to is the equipment that is not assigned to the location. The equipment that's assigned to the location would be located on the east. It's because it's going to complement the entrance to the Veterans Memorial Park, as well as complement the imaging that we're doing to the facility.
So all of the equipment that's not already assigned, you'll go ahead and write in that you'll park it on the west side?
Yes, ma'am.
and the kiosks?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Any questions from the commission? Okay. Maria Salgio? Does she not speak English? You're not Maria, are you?
Excuse me?
You're not Maria.
No.
Are you speaking for her?
Oh, no, she said she was yielding for me.
Yielding for you. And your name is Philip?
No, Bruce Kerr.
Bruce Kerr. Gotcha. Okay.
I'm sorry.
That's all right.
And Madam Chair, I do have some handouts, if you give me a second. These are my remarks, copy of the letter that we have in language. Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And if you'd state your name and address for the record before we start your 5 minutes, and you're on.
My name is Bruce Kerr. I live at Merritt Towers, 300 South Sykes Creek Parkway, Merritt Island, Florida, 32952. Good evening to the Board of Honorable County Commissioners, planning and zoning personnel, and any other persons officially involved with this proceeding. Let me start off by thanking the Brevard Veterans Memorial Council, our county commissioner staff, the Merritt Island Redevelopment Agency staff, and the U-Haul Company staff for working in partnership with the Merritt Towers homeowners in an amicable and helpful manner. I am here to support this project with additional conditions and considerations. In your zoning agenda package, you should find a document dated August 1st regarding the CUP request so as to not adversely affect the use and enjoyment of the residential character of the area. This document is a request for 2 additional conditions as submitted by the 2 approximal properties to the commercial property in question. The 2 parties are the Brevard County Veterans Council, maintaining a beautiful center, museum, park grounds for the enjoyment of the public and veterans, and the other, a luxury 240 unit multi-tower gated community of homeowners. Item 1 is that the U-Haul Company will park all non-conforming vehicles and/or other undefined equipment that may be dropped off by lessees at the far west end of the U-Haul parcel, hidden from view of Merritt Towers, with their storage facility in between, in order to prevent a further industrial look to our very residential area, adversely affecting our use and enjoyment of our homes and any saleability issues that may arise. Additionally, that all non-conforming vehicles, which could include trailers, as clarified by U-Haul Company staff during a July 31st meeting, be removed within the 72-hour period. The key kiosk, this is item 2, for return of vans, pickups, cargo trucks, and other vehicles, equipment which would be located on the west side of the structure, with signage containing verbiage such as, "This is not a drop-off site. Please drop vehicles off at the Rockledge U-Haul site." I note that although U-Haul personnel have stated they would not list this as a drop-off site on their website, I have not seen this in writing. As they have also stated this wouldn't occur often, this is also no qualification in writing, nor means to monitor, as this is an unmanned site 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. And if there is one thing I have learned from my careers, the only person who always got something correct was a man named Murphy. Condition number 2 in the Myra memo, dated June 29, 2018, should include the phrase military imaged and read outdoor parking would be limited to 40 military imaged U-Haul cargo vans and/or pickup trucks, though repairs will be done on site. And from what I think I heard Cal Connor say, is those would remain in the suggested site on the plan. We believe that the addition of these conditions will substantially avoid an industrial look to our residential area by maintaining the only military image conforming vans and pickup trucks on this site near the Veterans Memorial Center, thus removing the potential visual blight of cargo trucks and trailers, etc., in the front yard of our homes. Therefore, we respectfully request your inclusions of the above conditions as proposed by the 2 partnered properties that are affected by this action. I also respectfully refer to Administrative Policy 4, which I believe also covers our concerns, as well as the introduction of types of vehicles into a neighborhood into which they are not already present. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Philip Knorr? This is the applicant. He gets 15, right?
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Philip Knorr. My business address is 1795 West Nassau Boulevard, Melbourne, Florida. It's a little disconnected of how this presentation is being made in that Cal, who came up to you first, is the U-Haul representative. I represent the mall itself, and I'm really not the one to talk about as to specific conditions on the way they run their business. I will defer that to Cal, and perhaps at some point he can come up and address the last 2 items that have been made. My comments are going to be very brief. In front of you is a report with 11 conditions that U-Haul has already offered. The mall is fine with those conditions. We think they've reached out to the community. The idea of having these vehicles, and we're talking about cargo vans now, we're not talking about the big box vehicles, to reflect the military, I thought was unique, but apparently they're doing it in other places as well. Further, their commitment to the VA as far as to make their facility, parking in specific, available when there are events going on for the VA as well. I think you're going to find that they're going to be a very valued partner to the overall community. In doing that, it's not their intention or design to harm anyone. If we start talking about blight, though, you have blight. It exists right there in that building that really hasn't been used for over a decade. They are committed to spend millions of dollars to come in and improve and make it a viable building and a member within the community. So I don't think we're talking about a question of blight. We're talking about vehicles being parked in a parking lot which already is there to take care of the people who come into the mall. I can assure you, if you go by that mall, there are plenty of trucks already there that have nothing to do with us. Having said that, I believe what is being said here today by U-Haul is that it's an unmanned station. They can't dictate if a person who rents a box vehicle in Virginia drives down and deposits it at that site, because you're dealing with a nationwide operation. They have committed that since it's unmanned, that they will have someone there no later than 72 hours to get that particular vehicle out of there. They are not housing those type of vehicles at the site. What they're housing is cargo-type vans, and you see those every day on the street. So I think when we look at the particular concessions that have been made, even the ones that have come in at the 11th hour, we've reached out, we've adjusted, and we're, on behalf of the mall, we would urge you to allow this to go forward and that they be allowed to build their development. With that, and I don't mean to go out of order, if you would like Cal to come to the podium now and maybe respond to those two items that the last gentleman talked about, maybe we could get some clarity on that as far as what you all have to do here tonight.
Thank you. I think we'll wait to the end, so I finish the other cards, and that way we can clear up all the questions that
Fine.
might come forward.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Gil Saporito? Saporito. No, ma'am, if you'd come forward. There's only a few cards. That would be fine. Typically, I wouldn't do it. Rose, come on up.
Okay. Good evening, Madam Chair and honorable commissioners. Thank you for allowing me to speak this evening. I just wanted to add to what Bruce Kerr had mentioned and have this visual under the document reader.
Ma'am, would you state your name and address?
I'm
for
sorry.
me, clerk?
My name is Rose Kerr. I live at 300 South Sykes Creek Parkway, Merritt Island, Florida. First, let me say that we have been very pleased with the cooperation of all our partners at the County Commissioner's Office, U-Haul, our neighbor in the Veterans Memorial, so I'm very happy to speak tonight, knowing that even though concerns are aired and spoken of, that there's consideration by all parties to make this the best transition for our Merritt Island Square Mall and our visual, what we call our front yard. So what I'm speaking of is, if you look at this document, just to clarify, I like it bigger. Okay. It's important that this Merritt Tower show. There. Okay. So this is the site plan that U-Haul, I think it was Mr. Connors, that was very happy to send us, and this is the existing plan. If you see the word Merritt, the name Merritt Towers, you could see that we live right there. Those are our buildings. The plan is for the military image cargo vans to be put there. We understand that. What we're referring, I'm having a little trouble coordinating everything, I'm sorry. What we're requesting, just to be clear, is that all the non-conforming, non-military equipment be parked on the west side of the property here. And that's only to avoid any appearance industrial look, so that only in the front, and we realize that it's going to be very rare, as we've been told, that people will randomly drop off these vehicles, these larger cargo trucks. We understand that, and/or other equipment. But should it happen at all possible within the control of U-Haul, that they design it so that that's the area for non-conforming trucks and equipment, and that there be signage back there to say this is not a drop-off, and maybe they'll just go somewhere else. Maybe, as we had said in the language, over to Rockledge area, where there is the official drop-off. We also understand that there won't be any listing of this as the drop-off for U-Haul cargo vans and such. This won't be listed as a drop-off. That we're very happy about, and we hope that is honored. So I came up just to clarify the site plan, to show you that we live right here. And what our concern is that other kinds of equipment and trucks be located right there in our front yard. We are very happy and so pleased that that Publix building will now have beautiful silhouettes and everything else in the storage. But tonight we speak about the cup request, and we're happy to know that these vans and pickups will have a military look to them as well, conforming with our neighbors at the vet center, at our vet memorial center. But we're only asking, and it seems very simple to us, I hope it is for the company, that they do everything in their power to make sure the occasional or the random drop-offs not be in our front yard right there. Thank you very much. That's my main message tonight.
Thank you, ma'am. Ms. Rose Kerr? Oh, I'm sorry. Gil?
Thank you, Fiona.
Gil, would you want to come back up?
Good evening. My name is Gail Saporito, and I live also in the same building, 300 South Sykes Creek. My concerns are, most of them are covered already, okay? But this is a 24-hour facility, 7 days a week, with no one there. In a perfect world, that is wonderful, but not in reality. So maybe they can keep these, or somebody there, or signage that will give them direction to go to the other side, to the west side. We don't want it right in front of us. That's 40 trucks, plus all of their private vehicles. Where are their private vehicles going to be parked when they pick up that cargo van? There's nothing of a mention of those. Private vehicles could go from, trucks, jalopy cars, or vans of their own. We don't know where these cars are going to be going, or these private vehicles, and for how length. What is the length of the rental? They're going to have to park their vehicle there, but where? So all of these unknown entities, if they could be put onto the west side, we don't want to see it. And we also live in a building that even if somebody smokes in front of the place, you could smell it in the houses. We open our front door, we're like tunnels. It goes right to all through our houses. So you can imagine the emissions and the engine. It's, unless it's on the west side, it's going to be a problem for us. So, and like I said, it's not a perfect world. So 24 hours, there's no direction of any sort for any of these customers for rentals. Okay? And do they have anything for bathrooms and garbage pickups of what people are going to be dropping off out of their private car or out of their vans that they just rented? Where's all this stuff going to go? When you're on a trip, you're driving, you're eating, drinking, whatever. So there's nothing I saw that will take care of it. Okay? Thank you.
Ma'am. Thank you. Marilyn Light?
Marilyn Light, 300 South Sykes Creek Parkway at Merritt Towers. I'm surprised at two things. I was at the first meeting, I think that was July 9th, and there was no mention of trailers. It's even up there on the agenda, so I'm confused about that because I thought it was all cargo vans and U-Haul pickup trucks. So I don't know what this is about trailers. And last I was here, and since, especially with Cynthia Thurman, this effort to have all the U-Haul rental cargo vans pickups kept parked on the west of their parcel of land. And there was no mention last time about some of them, the so-called conforming ones be right in our front yard, meaning on the east side. So that was a shock to me, because the request that I understood for an additional condition of the cup was to just have all the rental cargo vans pickups as far west on the U-Haul parcel of land. Anyway, you got that message about the west side. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Commissioners, that's all the cards. I reserve time for Mr. Connor. Would you like to come up, sir? And
Well, I believe that just about everything that was brought up has already been addressed either in prior meetings and agreed to, or in the two items that was presented to you in part of your package. The two items that was presented last minute were that all non-conforming vehicles, to paraphrase, would be parked on the west side of the building. As I stated earlier, I don't have a concern with that. I'm fully willing to do it. My only concern is the very last portion of the statement where it refers to the equipment being removed from site within 72 hours. It's simply repetitive. It's already brought up in item 3 and agreed to from the prior meetings that we've had and the negotiations that we've done. The other item with the key kiosk in item 13 that was proposed, again, I have no concern with that either, other than the fact that it just needs some language change to show that it is referring to the non-conforming equipment. I think there's still a lot of confusion, and I fully understand, this is their home. The people at the condos, this is their homes, they're looking out across it. Currently, they're looking at a shopping mall. Okay? That would not be the view I would pick for my home. It's not theirs, I understand that, they want something to change. I'm here to be part of the community. I'm not here to be an enemy and go trash the place. I'm looking at investing millions and millions of dollars into renovating this. And I'm looking at putting a lot more into this property than we typically would with this type of an operation. I'm going a little bit beyond what the CUP request is, but I want everybody to understand my company is doing everything within their power to try to comply and try to help beautify this area. The equipment that we're talking about bringing out to the site that will be there at all times is cargo vans and pickups. Could I show a slide here? Just so that we're all on an understanding. That's what we're looking at putting on the property. My concern to the board is if I tell you that's all that will ever show up on this property, I'd be lying. I've been with my company a long time. I'm a company president. I know, as sure as I'm standing here, somebody out of Tennessee is going to show up on the lot at 2 in the morning, whether it's manned or unmanned will make no difference, and they're going to drop the equipment off on the lot and say, hey, I dropped it off. We have safeguards in place to prevent this to the best of our ability. We have the best technology there is in the moving industry. We have, when a customer picks up in wherever they're picking up from, they're given drop-off locations, specific locations they are to drop off at. The problem comes in when the customer drives through an area and they say, oh, wait a minute, there's a U-Haul, so they just drop the equipment off and they call us the next day and say, hey, I dropped it off, you figure it out. So I know it's going to happen, and that's why I'm very careful in saying this is the only thing that will ever show up. I am saying that this is what I will assign at the location, and when other equipment does show up, we're going to get it out. I just need enough time logistically to get it moved. There's concern with some of the residents with this being what's called an unmanned location. Unmanned, so it is what it is. We're not going to have a staff assigned to the location. We're not going to have a showroom at the location. But we will be monitoring the location on a constant basis. I have a state-of-the-art security system going in that will monitor both inside and outside the building. An investment this large, to say that I'm just going to walk away from it and hope for the best, it wouldn't make any business sense whatsoever. So this is something that we do. We do have unmanned facilities across the nation. We marry them up with a manned facility. In this case, we're looking at marrying this up with the Rockledge location over on Dixie Lane. The manager at that location would be responsible for both facilities. So that manager will be constantly, typically at least once a day, going to the property and taking care of whatever needs to be taken care of. There will be housekeepers that will be constantly in and out, taking care of the property. They will be in constant communication back with the general manager of the facility as well. My cell phone number will be on the wall of the building, as well as the general manager. So I understand their concerns. They don't know what's coming, okay? But being within the company and being on the other side of this, I know exactly how this is going to work. Yes, there will be hiccups. Yes, we're going to make mistakes. But I live here, okay? I oversee the east coast of Florida, but I live here in Brevard County. I'm going to be going by that property on a constant basis. What they have right now is a horrible view when they look out their front door. The customers that come into the mall, they're some of the same customers I'm going to have. Their equipment is, their car that they drive today is going to be the same car they drive when they come to rent my equipment. Where it's going to be, I don't know where they're going to park it. It's going to be wherever they choose to. I'm going to put some assigned parking there, but they're going to do what they want to do. I really don't know what else I can say to appease the condo residents, other than the fact that an investment this large will not go unsupervised.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Smith?
Sir, what are you going to use that big building for?
Storage.
And this is, do you have any idea how long it's been since this was an active Publix?
15, 20 years.
So it's just been sitting there?
It's been sitting there going downhill, yes.
So basically, you're going to improve the image 1,000%, and it's still going to be a parking lot, and it's still going to have vehicles in it.
Yes, sir.
And so I don't know that we need to get into the minutia of when and how, and I understand you're going to do everything you can to make it as amenable as possible, but business is business, and you don't have control over who parks where. So I think the people that live in that condo unit should be very happy that you're there, that you're sprucing this place up, and you're willing to work with them as much as you can. But as you said, it's not going to be perfect.
It will not be perfect. I'm going to do my part to make it as painless as possible, but it won't be perfect.
Thank you,
I'm
sir.
good.
Commissioner Barfield?
Well, first, I'd like to thank U-Haul, I'd like to thank Merritt Towers, and I want to thank the veterans, and I want to thank Merritt Island Redevelopment Agency. This was one of those things where everybody got together. My office helped too, and it's the way it should work. Everyone should get together, hash it out, figure out what's best, open mind, and then come back and work something out. And I wish this happened in a lot of other situations, but I want to thank you all. This has really, really been good. But I want to make sure you're okay with these changes we've talked about. The ones that were discussed, I think they're already in here. The last two with the vehicles are not assigned there. They only be on the west side, and you try to get them out within 72 hours if you can.
Correct.
So, okay. Okay, does anybody else have any questions? No.
Commissioner Snarty?
I don't have as many questions, and I would just echo what you said. I think it's a perfect, marriage. You guys were able to work out things. You made concessions. Obviously, it's going to cost you more money to comply and more, I don't want to say hassle, because it's not a hassle if you're helping the neighbors. So I appreciate that, and thank you, to the folks in Merritt Island for working with them instead of just saying you don't want anything done, because I'm sure you want that property to look better too. I just want clarification, because I know we received those 2 additional items, and I know the applicant you had some concern with the language. So I want to make
It's only minor language changes. In item 12, the very last statement refers to removing the equipment from, the non-conforming equipment from site within 72 hours. It's just repetitive. It's already in item 3.
It is.
And on item 13, where it refers to the first statement, where it refers to the key kiosk for return of the vans, pickups, et cetera, that should be changed to the non-conforming.
Okay.
I'm not sure how we're going to set up the conforming system at this point, so I would hate to be locked into something that's not going to work. But the non-conforming, I have no issue with that at all.
I just wanted to be sure that I understood it correctly, too. Thank you.
Okay, then I'm good with this. Again, thank you all for all working together on this. So I'd like to make a motion to approve the conditional use permit for truck and trailer rental and include the Meyer and planning and zoning comments that were brought up. And the location of storage for non-conforming to the west side, and that there's signage on the kiosk to tell people to go to Rockledge or wherever to keep them from dropping off there. And with that, that's my motion.
Motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Well, 4-0, it passes. Thank
All
you,
right,
sir.
thank you.
And the last item before you today, item 10, is a proposal by Ron E. Demena, represented by Malcolm Kirschenbaum and Jack Kirschenbaum, requesting a change of zoning classification from AU to EU with a binding development plan. The property is 163 acres in size, located on the north side of North Tropical Trail in North Merritt Island.
Thank you. Let's see if I can find the applicant real quick. Jack Kirschenbaum? Yeah. Mr. Jack Kirschenbaum?
Good evening. Thank you for your time this evening. My name is Jack Kirschenbaum, and I represent Ron Demena, the applicant, tonight. I'll make a few opening comments, but more important than my comments are some experts that I brought with me tonight. I have Joe Mayer, who's a drainage expert, which I think everyone agrees is a terribly, terribly important element of this. And I also have Josh Black, who is a traffic engineer and an expert with LTG that will really help get some facts out. First of all, I'd like to report that we come before you this evening with a 5-0 favorable vote from the Planning and Zoning Board. We have submitted a binding development plan, and I'd like to hit just the top points of that. First of all, there will be no septic tanks at these lots. We have agreed at the owner's expense to extend the force mains from where they are on Courtney around Church all the way to the site. And so that was one of Ron's most critical elements, that he would not do any development here that requires septic tanks, and so the force mains will be extended at his expense. Second, we'll limit this to 1 unit per acre, 163 acres, no more than 163 lots maximum. We will limit the ingress and egress. There is one existing driveway that goes to a home on the property. That would remain for that one home. And then the other access would be in the southeast portion of the property. That would be the only other access to the property. But most important, the binding development plan provides that immediately upon the acceptance of the binding development plan by the county, that we will engage in analysis and study to attempt, and we think we can, solve what we all know are significant drainage issues there. And that is at Ron's expense, before subdivision planning, before all the other things that you know have to be done to develop a piece of property. And that is what Mr. Mayor will address, and I think he will supply some good data with regards to what is there now, the drainage that runs, the historical drainage that runs north and then west, isn't and hasn't been adequate, and what we can do both in the final analysis as well in this planning and development stages, supply some drainage solutions that will help that property, but more importantly, the neighbors and that whole North Merritt Island section. So with that, I'd like to introduce Mr. Mayor. And you all know him, and he has some handouts that I'll provide to you now.
Thank you, Jack. Commissioners, good evening. My name is Joe Mayer. I'm the president and owner of Bussin Mayer Engineering Group, and I'm serving as the engineer of record for this project. As Jack says, we've become acutely aware of the drainage issues as we've gone through this process. The project, of course, will meet all of the state and county regulations regarding taking care of our own water, just like any project would have to do, meeting the pre and post development for 25-year storm, things of that nature. However, what we've found in going through this process is that we think we can be way more a part of a solution to the regional drainage problems that are occurring in this area just because of the given characteristics of this particular piece of property. The second page of the picture that you got handed out is the same picture. The second page, I've highlighted on there the approximate location of the drainage ditches, if you will, that provide for historic drainage and have, in my opinion, as best I can tell from my research, been there a long time to address historical drainage for the properties. However, those ditches over the course of time have become clogged, they become filled up, there's restrictions in the ditches, there's places where there's small pipes, where there's dirt driveways, etc., that are limiting the flow, where water just can't get through there. And we truly believe, and I don't have topographic data yet, I haven't done a design, but in looking at this, we truly believe that we can be part of the solution by improving the flow capacity, improving the conveyance capacity of these ditches. We think it's going to help our client, but we also think it's going to help the drainage problems that are occurring in the entire area. We learned in this process through the statements of the folks in the area that water sits there in this ponded condition for sometimes 21 days and things of that nature. That should not happen in this, and we should be able to understand that in big storms, rivers rise, the water has nowhere to go. It might sit for a few days, but not 21 days. We truly think that we can be part of the solution, and our client at the Planning and Zoning Board actually asked us. We came originally with the binding development plan saying, hey, we'll be part of the solution as a part of our project. Planning and Zoning Board asked us to bring that part forward and say, they asked us if we would be part of the solution right away, start working with county staff and the St. Johns River Water Management District, doing the topo right away, even before we submit for our subdivision approval. We talked to our client. He frankly did not have a full understanding of how this was affecting the neighborhood. He's agreed to allow us to do that and to, as Jack said, fund some early research and design work and topo work, etc., to solve the problems. So again, from everything I've seen, flood maps, I've talked to county staff, I've had conversations, I truly believe that we can be part of a solution here to an ongoing problem and actually make an improvement in the drainage situation as a part of the project. I don't get to say that very often with projects, but in this particular case, I believe that's the case. I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you, sir. These are all old lights. Mr. Josh Black?
I'm Josh Black with Lassiter Transportation Group. We've been retained by the client to provide a rezoning transportation impact study that I get a handout for you guys.
You can just give them to me. I'll pass them down. Thank you.
So basically, in our analysis, we look at what the maximum build out for the proposed property versus the existing property uses. In our report, we found that the proposed use is a reduction of 653 daily trips and 364 peak hour trips for the use of 1 unit per acre. That's on page 2. And from what I understand, there's some folks here that have concerns that I could address at a later point in time.
Certainly. Okay. Mr. Jim Charbonneau? Terry Digman, you'll be next, if you would come towards the front. Carbone. Sorry, Mr. Carbone.
That's close enough. It gets hit hard. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, commissioners. I'm here as a homeowner. I live at 200 West Crisafulli Road, so I'm on the north side of the road. I'm also part of and a member of the North Merritt Island Dependent Special Board, so I just want to let you know that. The plan that we've been asked to look at is a draft, and I have a hard time understanding how we can look at things like proposed drainage ditches, proposed water flow solutions, without knowing the exact details of what's being prepared. Flooding, and I'm sure you hear more about that. There's a lot of flooding pictures in your packages. One of the things that has happened historically on Crisafulli Road, and I brought out the point that I live on the north side, is from the north side of Crisafulli Road, water historically has flowed north. South side it has flowed south. I understand that there is a program underway right now where the county is studying the water flow on the south side, has been talking to the owners of the Policiccio property, Mr. and Mrs. Caplet, about doing some easements and some studies there. Historically, on the north side, Mr. Dementa's property, the ditches haven't been maintained. He hasn't run his pump, and I'm not so sure why we all of a sudden can think we can solve that solution of the water flow with the study that's going on. I think we need to look at the combination of those studies. There is Mr. Dementa has 2 pumps on his property, which currently are permitted by the St. John's Water Management District to agricultural use. If those pumps are going to be used as part of the solution to the drainage, according to St. John's Water Management, if that zoning is changed, the permit for agricultural use will probably be rescinded. And I think that needs to be looked at. Historically, as I said, we've had issues of drainage to the north, and at his own expense, Mr. Dementa has not previously, as a good neighbor, looked at cleaning those ditches or improving their water flow. The BDP that we have heard a lot about talks about does not address the flooding or the pump usage issues. I think that needs to be looked at. The sewer line that was mentioned by Mr. Kirschenbaum is a great step in the right direction with this property. The body development plan also says that if North Merritt Island incorporates, that BDP goes away. What happens to the ownership and maintenance of that existing sewer line? And once it's in place, who and how many others might be able to connect to that line for future use? Currently, there's another program going on, the North Merritt Island Small Area Study, which is being finalized and is up for completion here in the very near future. I would like to see the county's solution to the drainage problem and the North Merritt Island Small Area Study conclusions looked at together and addressed by the August board to see how we can go forward. Also, with regard to the traffic, the roads, Merritt Island has one major highway, State Route 3, north and south. It has the ancillary road to the west, north Tropical Trail. Those are the north and south roads. We haven't, as a group, looked at all the impact of all of these subdivisions that we've looked at and that have been approved over the last year, and the total impacts to the traffic, to the schools, to the infrastructure. The east-west roads on North Merritt Island all have large ditches in them. Looking at the water flow in those ditches is a problem, and hopefully is part of the study being conducted. I would like to see this whole rezoning issue tabled until those two things are done, and a decision be made in the future on what to do with this property. If Mr. Demento wants a legacy, then I would recommend that he takes the property that he's got and donates it to the Historical North Merritt Island Preservation Society in his name.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Terry Dingman? Arnold Dingman, if you'd come towards the front and be ready, sir.
Good evening, Commissioners, staff. My name is Terry Dingman. I live at 6200 Crystal Lane, Merritt Island, 32953. And my husband and I, that property is south of the proposed development. And I have many concerns, which are shared by my fellow residents, and I'll just touch on a couple. One of my main concerns is the historical rural atmosphere that we live in and what this proposed development will do to that. Where North Merritt Island is considered rural, along North Tropical Trail, we are definitely a rural area with most people residing on larger lots. That's what drew us there. That's what drew Mr. Demena there years ago. And while they have stated that that is his sanctuary, it is also our sanctuary. And adding another 163 houses to that small area will definitely do detrimental damage to our rural environment. There's been many hundreds of houses that you have already approved for north of the Barge Canal. The traffic resulting from that combined with this is going to be more than our small, narrow North Tropical Trail can handle, regardless of what the studies say. I don't think that the majority of this traffic is going to run out to Courtney and move that way. I think it's going to be going up and down North Tropical Trail. This development is also going to erode the rural atmosphere we have. The increased traffic, it's going to overcrowd our schools, resulting in a redistricting, and it'll jeopardize the endangered animals and their habitats, including the wetlands in the area. Not to mention that it will reduce our property values. The density is a huge concern for all of us. We all know that there's a small area study that has been conducted and is currently in the hands of the county for finalization. This new study, I believe, recalls for even further reducing the proposed density for this property. I would strongly recommend that this whole issue be tabled until that small area study can be looked at in conjunction with this so that we don't end up worsening our situation. Lastly, the historical drainage and flooding that we experience. In the last 15 years, the continued development in North Merritt Island has caused drastic changes in the historical drainage. That combined with the fact that Mr. Demena, the self-proclaimed good neighbor, has stopped maintaining those drainage ditches, not running the pump as much as he used to be, or multiple pumps, which has resulted in all of us having tremendous amounts of standing water for weeks following storms and high rain periods. I find that the information that's been conveyed in their proposal and the binding development plan is still vague. There's just not enough details. They say that their proposed drainage will help our situation, but let's see some of that before we go forward with approving a rezoning. Because without an improved drainage situation, that increased capacity just will do nothing but put us further underwater. Therefore, at this point, my request would be that this be tabled until a further point when all the studies can be looked at one time.
Thank you, Ms. Dingman. Arnold Dingman? Mary Hilberg, you'll be next, ma'am, if you come towards the front.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so it's pretty slow. All right, so sorry for my voice. I've been out working all day, and it's not the best.
In your package, it's the same presentation that I want to run through, and I'll make it as quick as possible. So everyone's already talked about the 163 homes, and that we cannot really sustain that many homes in that area. And some of the reasons are, as you go through the presentation, the first 3 slides are my house. I've got 9 acres. I've lived there, and we've owned the property since 1970. In the last 8 years, only this has begun flooding. Not forever. I've been there forever. In the last 8 years or so, 9 maybe, we've started seeing this really bad flooding. So just quickly, we'll go through. The picture on the left on slide 2 is how it looks when it really rains. The picture on the right is how it looks today. We used to have a garden out there, but the garden is completely underwater probably 80% of the time. With my own personal money, as a good neighbor, I've gone through, and some of my neighbors that are speaking today also helped, and we are digging our own ditches and cleaning them out so we'll have better water flow to help our neighbors. The next slide is also my property. The first slide on the left is my front yard. The slide on the right is the flooding. If you'll notice the picture above and the picture below, there's 22 days the water is standing in my yard. That's not acceptable to anyone. How would you like to try? And I can't get to the other side of my property. My tractor won't even go through it. This picture on the bottom left is a picture showing the water went from my house all the way to Chrysopholy Lane. The neighbors actually paddled up to our house through the orange grove in a canoe. Once again, this is my property again with massive flooding. Slide number 5 is the neighbor at 6370 North Tropical Trail. He had to go in and out of his house. This is directly south of the proposed entrance. He had to go in and out of his house for a month with a canoe. And the neighbor on the other side, directly south of the project at 6345, that's his car on the right during this time, and that's what his yard looked like last week. Obviously, we have flooding issues severe. These are the 2 roads that are directly across the street from the proposed entrance. Kangaroo on the left, how it looks when it rains really bad, and that's how it looked a couple of days ago. One on the right is how it was, up top is how it looked a couple of days ago, and the bottom is how it looks when it rains really, really bad, like, obviously a hurricane. The neighbors that all on Littleton Lane are all opposed to this as well. Their properties, this was a couple of days ago, just when it rained 3 inches. All of their properties just go underwater. And there are ditches there that go north. Fortunately, on their west side is a county-maintained ditch, which stays pretty clean. The other ones are on slide 8 is directly south of the project, and they are typically always underwater. What happened, let's see here, slide 8, the bottom of, it says normal view of boomerang, something has messed up here. The 3 houses that you see on slide, I want to say probably 9, yes. They have been raised so much. All that water used to be 22 acres of orange grove on my Uncle Frank LaRoche owned. They bought that, and then they raised 7 house sites up, 1 to 2 feet above the crown of the road. All that water goes to my place. And that's been in the last 7 to 8 years. I don't know the exact dates. Slide number 10 is just an aerial map that shows where these properties are located per the slide. I won't go into details on that. The drainage ditches that are underneath on slide 11 are, the one on the left is the one that's maintained by the county and goes in front of my Aunt Patsy's old house, the Sam's place. It goes all the way up through there and it's maintained to this little ditch right there, which is where Ron's outflow is on the highlighted drawing, is proposed to go. The one in the middle goes, number 2, it goes under the road. These are all go under the county road. It goes at least 2 feet before it's completely clogged. And the one on the right, the third one, goes at least 5 feet before it's completely clogged. So There's no maintenance of any kind from anyone, and it doesn't help our flooding situation. Oh, I'm out of time.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Can I finish one wrap-up?
Nope. No, we got a lot of the cards
Okay,
over
well,
there behind you.
I would like to see it tabled.
Thank you. Miss Mary and Bill Hilberg, you'll be next.
Good evening. I'm Mary Hilberg. I live at 3780 Sierra Drive in North Merritt Island. I'm representing also the North Merritt Island Special Advisory Dependent Board. We're an elected board, as you know, by the citizens of North Merritt Island. We met and listened to the applicant and all the representatives and looked at all their data, and we voted 7-0 to recommend denial. Because of the flooding and the traffic, but mainly the flooding. This is historically a low, wetland flood zone area, and you know it is. And we've had this over and over again. We're overdeveloping in areas that are putting people at risk, properties at risk, lives at risk. Eventually, it's going to turn around and bite us. And the county has spent multiple dollars, hours, weeks, months, years of time, pumps, plans, projects. We've had tours of all the things that the county's tried to do to stop the water from continuing to collect in a bowl. And you can only move it so much, and then you try to move it out to the river, and the river is rising as well. It's just not appropriate to put such high density there. AU is the proper zoning for that, and BDPs have a varying lifespan, as we've seen tonight, so that we have no faith in them whatsoever. With someone else maybe feeling that they're honestly representing something, but we feel that that's not an appropriate thing to bank on at all. Not because that you might change it, but because it's not going to work. Water knows about gravity, and it's going to go where it's going to go. And the more we develop, the harder it's going to be for the people who have already paid their taxes. They're already here. Excuse me, they're the current residents here. They're here, and they're depending on you to protect them. Please do. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. You're waving your... Okay, sir. Michael Hercule? Wonderful. Darlene Hunt, you'll be next, ma'am.
My name is Michael Hercala, and I live on North Merritt Island, 4618 Woodstock Drive. I'm not a neighbor of these people, but water is all over the place anyway. What my particular feeling about this, I stated in the past, the biggest problem is densities. You could live on places like this, but you can't have high densities, and you keep packing them in. Everything that happens, everything that's voted on here is almost everything is granted to the people because they want more densities. And okay, fine, it's to make more money on my property, but you can't do it because Mother Nature is going to kill you no matter what you do. It's just, I can't understand why they keep saying they're going to put a 1 acre zone in the darn thing, and it turns out to be half acre lots, or a half acre zone is going to be a quarter acre lot. You know, it sort of makes it look better on the paper, but it makes it even worse. The one you put behind my house, I live on the Island Lakes, and I'm on the back end of it, and there's a ditch behind my backyard between me and the property that was behind me, the orange groves. Well, now that property used to be lower than mine. Well, now it's 4.5 feet higher. They put 4.5 feet of fill in it, and I don't know what the kind of fill they put in there, but that ditch constantly has, the water is never gone. It's always there. It used to leave me, you know, once in a while, but since I'd say since last year, the year before, And so before that, it would leave, but now it's there all the time. And naturally, we get the mosquitoes and everything else. So, that just can't be maintained. You've got to be able to take one hard look and say, you can or you cannot do it. And I don't want to keep saying about the fact that I used to live someplace and I know something about planning and zoning, but I can't for the life of me understand why you can call something a 1 acre zone when the house is not on 1 acre. I just can't understand that. It's almost like a misrepresentation. That, to me, anyway, is real planning. And there can be plans to do something. Where I used to live wasn't like this, but they did a lot of good things. You could maintain the environment by putting houses on smaller lots and keeping forever green property. It's set that it will never be developed, and you'd have to go to court to make it something else. But things like that can happen. You could do it, but increasing densities is something that's going to screw up the area real bad, and it's already started. And I told you some of the things that happened to me when I was before this board before. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Darlene Hunt?
Good evening, Madam Chairman, Commissioners, and staff. I'm Darlene Hunt. I live at 125 West Crisafulli Road on North Merritt Island. I know we keep talking about flooding. Okay. I've lived on North Merritt Island for 40 years, and we've been talking about flooding for 40 years. I remember when Ernie Brown was the director, Ron Jones was the director of surface water management, and he contracted with Post Bunkley, Shoe and Jernigan to do a study 20 some odd years ago, maybe 25 years ago, and then they did another study a couple of years later to identify flooding problems for North Merritt Island. So the county has been spending thousands, millions of dollars to help the residents on North Merritt Island with flooding problems. They've purchased land. As Mary and people before me, they've cleaned ditches, they've added pumps. Other people too, Ernie Brown, John Denenhoff, Virginia Barker, Frank Scarvella, Scott Spilmer, John Giuliano with St. John's River Water Management District. A lot of really smart people have been working on our water problems on North Merritt Island. I live on 5 acres, and for 20 some odd years, we were mentioned in the Post Bunkley Shoe Jernigan study. So it's been engineered, and it's been studied, and engineered and studied, and we still, and they're doing it right now. I know they're doing surveys, but our flooding is worse than it has ever been in the 40 years we've lived there. I know you guys are sick and tired of hearing about this, but this is really true stuff. In the past couple of years, you've an unprecedented number of higher density zonings, even though the people come and tell you, do you not believe your own people? I mean, you guys have the power to make the decisions for us, and that's why we keep coming and appealing to you. And I'm not blaming the county for any of our flooding problems. The county didn't do it. The county's been trying to help fix the problems. So I think the most important thing you can do for us constituents and residents is to pay close attention to the increasing of density. You know, when you have 163 acres, you don't have to put 163 houses on it. Because it's a rural atmosphere, people are happy to have 2.5 acres and have a horse, or 5 acres and have a horse. And, we can live with the flooding if it's not overbearing and impacting the people that are already there. Did I get emotional? I'm sorry if I did. I just would respectfully like to ask you to not allow this density. If you want to come up with something in half or more, postpone it until we do finish the small area study so you can see this the data that the county is, your own people have put together. That's it.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Jack Ratterman. Nancy and Chris Minerva, you'll be next if you'd come towards the front, please.
Good evening, board members. Good evening, board members. My name is Jack Ratterman. I live at 568 East Hall Road, and I'm representing the North Merritt Island Homeowners Association, which represents 7,000 people about from the Barge Canal to the NASA Gate. So all these zonings that are coming out there, there's no study been done to show the impact of the ones that are proposed and the ones that are proposed and haven't been completed. My tally is there's at least 700 homes in the process of being built out there. And there's no study done as far as what that impact's going to be on the traffic, on the flooding, on the schools, on the safety. And it seems like every time we come here and we talk to you that I almost feel like your gavel's up and you're waiting for us to say the last word and you're going to say approve. And so I'm trying to go a different route this time. Our nation was founded on individual rights, and it seems like this board is very concerned about property rights. Okay, just like I have rights, I have a right to freedom of the speech. But I can't go in a movie theater and jump up and yell fire. Why is that? Because that right would jeopardize somebody else's right of safety. That's why I can't do that. I can't do other things. I can't accuse somebody on this board of something, a felony offense, unless it was true, because that would jeopardize somebody else's right and their safety. And Ron Domena is wanting to use his property rights, but they're going to harm other people in the area, many other people in the area. That's what they're going to do. So his property rights do not go over all the other people's rights that are already there. Colony Park, which butts up against Mr. Domena's property, if you're not familiar with it, Colony Park is often referred to out there as the White Hood. You know, it's not the worst place to live, but the Colony Park posse, their gang out there, is the worst gang on the island. Nobody goes up against them. And Colony Park is a hard place to live. I'm not saying anything against the residents that are there. The most beloved person I ever knew, almost. My track coach lived out there till he passed away. And we would often come visit him in Colony Park. But when this issue came up, Colony Park came up and did not want Mr. Domena's houses behind him. So if you're living in the White Hood and you don't want Mr. Domena to come and put those houses behind you, that's a sign right there that they're worried about something. And then their traffic engineer comes in here on the last night, the last stance here. He comes up here. And if he's their traffic engineer, how about him tell me how wide that road is where their entrance is going to be coming in and out of their community? I challenge him to tell me. Tell me.
No, sir, direct it towards the front. We don't
Okay,
do that.
well, he doesn't know. That's because he hasn't done an engineering study out there. It's 18 feet. 18 feet wide. That's a narrow road. The ditches are a good 8 feet deep. And they're going to have that one entrance come in and out of there. And that's it. The last thing I'd like for you to think about is that we expect you to represent us in a democratic process. You're supposed to represent the majority. The majority of people on North Merritt Island has voted against this. At the homeowners meeting, it was unanimous vote against this development. So I'm asking you to come back, for them to come back and show us some more detail. What are they going to do with the flooding? What are they going to do with the traffic and the safety issues? And not just tell us at the last minute here what they might do. If they're so sure of all this, then maybe Mr. Domena or Mr. Myers there would like to put up a bond and guarantee that they're going to do these things so that we'll make sure that our community can sleep at night. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Nancy Minerva? Mr. Minerva, you'll be next.
Hello, everybody, and thank you very much for all you do for us. Okay, I live at 5385 Lovett Drive, Merritt Island, Florida, and I'm here on just as a member of the community, and I agree with what all the people have said. There's not a lot to add to what has been said, but I wanted to just I wanted to emphasize Administrative Policy 4 is the character of the neighborhood shall be a factor for considering whether rezoning should be approved, and that certainly is changing the character of a neighborhood where you have the Eels, the parks right next to that property. You have residents with with very big pieces of property in that area, and as everyone said, that's a problem, and you're changing that. And also, a lot of people have mentioned roads. That's Administrative Policy 5, and people have spoken before and will speak again about the volume of traffic, and we're not just talking about what is happening with this development, but this is one more of many that are coming on top of parking that has been slipped in, and so we're going to have a lot more traffic, and how is that going to impact everybody? So we're not just talking about one place, we're talking about many developments, and this is just one more. Also, since 1986, North Merritt Island Homeowners has published the Courtney Notes. I think probably you've gotten copies of it, but it comes out every month. And periodically, they have done surveys of what the residents would like to see in their area. And as Mr. Ratterman just said, you represent us and you're trying to do what's good for everybody. And so the residents of North Merritt Island in these studies have said over and over again, what's the most important? This is a January 1999. What's the most important? Quality of life, home security, safety was 1. Number 2, retention and enhancement of the rural agricultural character. 3, continue close monitoring and defense of planning and zoning. 4, environmental issues such as water quality. Okay, and it goes on. But so there you go, the things that we're talking about today that all apply to this, are present there. So I think that was, okay, I mentioned that. So I would respectfully ask that until this small area study is completed and presented and you get to see the results of all of the work that has been done for many months and years culminating in this, until you see what the effect of Egret's Landing has when you have residents there, until you see what has happened with what has already been approved, could you please just put a moratorium on development and not approve this until we have factual case history, not possibility and studies. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Minerva? Okay.
My name is Chris Minerva. I live in 5385 Lovett Drive, North Merritt Island, Florida, 32953. I don't want to go through it. Everyone has said it more or less the same thing. This is just a sheet of what happened in the past year and what the 3 items that have numbers for new home approvals. So just from these new homes, these 633 new homes total, plus more approved that were not yet built, this is only from the last year. There are over 1,000 cars from 633 for homes. That's added to traffic. I don't think any of the traffic studies include the estimated cars, only the existing cars, not any of the other things that are approved and not yet made or built. We have more than 1,000 cruise parking spaces at the bridge that are approved, that are grandfathered in, so that's going to cause a bottleneck there at the bridge. I mean, we really need a new egress off the island. I mean, we have a controlled bridge that, raises up and down every so often. It's like, that's it, 2 lanes in each direction. Okay, I just want to go through, don't want to keep you, it's very, very short. I know Mr. Dunninghoff knows that during a heavy storm, the rivers on either side of the island often rise higher than the land, particularly the older homes on lower properties. We have discussed this, where can we pump the water under these conditions? We've spoken about this. It's too high. Okay, so now 279 homes, according to what I just filled out there from the one, were already approved. You have the opportunity to approve or deny the next 3 requests, which are 354 homes, including the one for 163 today. We all moved in search of our own personal quality of life. I would imagine that you also did, based on your personal interests. This is what, we've all heard everything. This is just this year, plus all the other things that happened the past couple of years on top of that, and that are not even yet done. I appreciate all of you do, and I appreciate hearing us all, and thank you very much for your efforts.
Thank you, Mr. Minerva. Okay, that's all of the cards. Commissioners, do you have any questions? We can take a 5-minute break. We'll come back at 5 minutes till 7, 6:55.
I got to chat with you for like 30 seconds after, if that's okay?
I call the meeting back to order. Commissioners, do we have any comments or questions?
I have a few questions for staff first.
Okay.
I know there was some discussion about the process that we go through, that we approve this or not. This could all go as planned without any more studies or anything like that. I think you need to clear it up. If I could have one of y'all explain the process with each stage of what happens in the development stage. Once we do the zoning, what goes next, and what happens next, and what it entails.
Yes, sir. So tonight we're considering the zoning, and with their zoning, they have a pretty specific binding development plan. It has some stipulations that they would be looking at, and you all are taking into consideration. So typically, within 120 days, that comes back before the board for the final approval. After that, we would be moving into the subdivision process, and the subdivision process is where we review all of the engineering for the development. But in this case, it's unique because in part of their binding development plan, they said that they were going to engage in some engineering up front in looking at making some of the drainage improvements and cleaning up the historic drainage, either a partnership with us or on their own. So once we get into that phase, that's where we get into the, when we get into the subdivision phase, we get the engineering going. They do the design, and then we make sure that they meet all of the requirements of the binding development plan and our local codes.
In the engineering side, that's when they would also address all the drainage in much more detail.
They would address the drainage, they would address transportation at that point. We would be looking at on-site and off-site improvements. So if there was, I know there was a mention of the roadway width. At that point, we would be looking at that improvement to see what would be the necessary width to facilitate the traffic that they would be generating along with the background traffic.
Okay. What approval process comes here in all of that? What do we do approvals on?
So you would be approving tonight, you would be approving the binding development plan when we bring it back, and then you would be approving the final plat. The engineering and the preliminary plat is an administrative approval.
Okay, one other question just to clear up. Explain how we determine the density. I know there's questions about we're doing 1 per acre, 1 unit per acre. That's much more dense than was 160 homes per 160. Explain all that.
We have a policy in our zoning code that allows for smaller lot sizes to become consistent with the future land use designation. And so I think that's what folks are concerned about, is how do you get to a zoning that's less than an acre in a future land use designation that allows only for 1 unit per acre. So the comprehensive plan and the future land use designation restricts the density over the entire property. The zoning is the individual lot size. So they end up, what they're requesting to do today is not have a 1 acre lot size, which they could be requesting, but they're requesting a smaller lot size so they can consolidate that development, preserve some of the open space or maybe potentially some of the undevelopable or wetland area on the property, and limit those 163 units to a smaller portion of the greater area. But overall, they don't exceed the 1 unit per acre threshold regulated by the comprehensive plan.
So, but the future land use is at 1 acre?
Yeah,
correct?
it's residential 1 unit per acre.
Okay. Clear me up for right now.
Commissioner Snarty.
When is our study going to be done up in Merritt Island?
We are putting the final touches on it. We've had our last committee meeting. We may bring it back to them one more time because we put some additional maps in at the last minute to show kind of the history over time with the comprehensive plan changes that have taken place in North Merritt Island. But it should be before you within the next 2 to 3 months.
And I know it's difficult to predict, but do you think that this project will interfere with any plans or any recommendations that you have coming forward?
The only specific recommendation that I think is in conflict potentially with what they're proposing is the proposal for a future land use designation change. So the recommendation that they have, and we have no idea whether or not the board will support it, is to change the land use designation from residential 1 on properties with AU zoning, which this property currently has, to residential 1 to 2.5. So that would reduce the density potential to 1 unit per 2.5 acres. Their zoning currently is 2.5 acre lot sizes. So it brings the comprehensive plan consistent with the zoning classification that they currently have. And so that's what the committee is primarily focused on with land use changes. They have some other provisions in there seeking stormwater modeling, improvements in the stormwater code, things that affect development in later phases, but that's the primary, I guess, recommendation that is in conflict with this proposal.
Because I think most important for the future of Merritt Island is coming up with a plan to address all this drainage, and even if it's something that's not attainable in the next couple of years, something long-term that we can look at to address future, and that way it will eliminate some of that guesswork. I mean, it's obvious probably to everybody in the room, but that's what I would get excited about to see.
Ms. Aaron, who is doing the small area study?
That's me.
You're
Well,
doing
me, and I should also recognize that many of the people in this room have sat as voluntary committee members on that study for 3 years now.
Okay, is there a good representation of all the property owners that show up for it?
There are no large property owners. I think the largest property owner that we have is about 5 acre lot for the individual residents. But everyone's a resident of North Merritt Island, but there is no larger property owner or agricultural user of land on that committee.
Because we've been hearing a lot about it. I'm sorry, don't talk out there.
Let me say that again. There's no one who's running cows or doing anything like that. They're all using their properties for agricultural purposes, mangoes, and doing all kinds of...
I guess I should ask you this offline. So is there a good representation on that board when everybody's making these decisions?
There is. They're very tuned in, and the committee chairwoman was the committee chairwoman in 1992 when the first small area study was done. So they're long-term vested stakeholders.
Just one other point, Commissioner, is most of those meetings, I think all of those meetings have been in a public forum, so there's been public advertisement, which has gone out to all of the citizens and residents in North Merritt Island.
Okay. Mr. Barkeld.
Mr. Denninghoff, you know a little bit about the drainage issues up there, I think. We've been out there a lot, I know, an awful lot. And what's your take on Ron Domena's property? I mean, I know I've been there when it's flooding and it all goes north and go across the road. When it's really bad, it goes north. And we were having discussions with Mr. Mayor and also Mr. Denman, they came in different times talking, and it seems like that whole area where they're talking about can be something that's really causing a lot of the flooding as it is right now. What's your take on that?
I'm a little familiar with this property from my youth. There was a great deal of drainage systems throughout that area which were privately owned and were really a part of the infrastructure which Grove owners had created over many, many decades. And thus, as Grove owners do, they either flood their property or they drain their property by using pumps. And there were a great many pumps up there for that purpose. And they would keep the ditches clean as they needed them to be for their purposes. And as fewer and fewer of the groves were actually operating groves, that infrastructure that they had fell into disrepair. And it also was never really there was never really a comprehensive design associated with it. They just sort of did it by trial and error. And so as a result, you'd have pipes that were undersized and pipes that were maybe bigger than they had to be. But they would solve those problems just by hauling them out and opening the ditch up and letting the water go if they needed to. And in addition to that, as their groves fell into less of an important source of revenue for them, they would stop operating their pumps. And over the years, they would also sell property to individuals who would build a house, and they may or may not be aware of the exact circumstances how the drainage for their area works. And so as those pumps fell offline, so to speak, the result is that water levels would rise. That coupled with those ditches falling into disrepair has resulted in a cumulative effect, along with development, has had a cumulative effect of increasing the frequency of flooding and the level of the flooding. There's never been in my view, an adequate study to really identify how bad or not the North Merritt Island is. There's been very focused studies to deal with what can we get done for this specific area or at this specific location or that location, but not a comprehensive one. And so I think what the recommendation in the small area study is to suggest that we go ahead and get that done. Currently, I don't know, I think we've estimated what we think it might cost, but we have not started such a study. We don't have funding for it at this point. In the case of the Mr. Domina's property, it has all of the above associated with it. There's been houses that have developed around it. His ditches have privately owned, and no public easements on them or anything like that, or any legal obligation for him to maintain those ditches. They've fallen into that state of disrepair. There's no doubt in my mind that if those ditches were improved and cleaned, that we would see an improvement in the water, the performance of the drainage system overall for the area. I think it would extend at least to West Crisafulli Road, going to the south of the Domina property, and I think would also benefit. Currently, a lot of the water that floods into the Domina property or in that vicinity does work its way eventually to the Pine Island Road ditch, and then has to be pumped out during flood conditions. Be pumped out at the Pine Island Conservation Area. And so, if we were to improve the performance of that system, it would be able to run to the west, as Mr. Mayor had suggested, and I think it would take pressure off of everything that drains up towards Pine Island, which actually extends, the Pine Island Conservation Area, which actually extends all the way down to Hall Road. So it
was
will
gonna
help. The extent of how much it will help, I do not know. I can't tell. There's data that's needed, survey information is needed, as well as some drainage analysis that we can't really do right this minute.
Well, John, it looked to me like originally, when we started looking at this, the ditch system, if it was all working properly, it would flow north and then flow west, and then would be an outfall out to the lagoon, but the south part, I guess, of the South Lake from Pine Island. Is that correct, right along there? But look, if that was operating, to me, it seems like that would run water out and not put pressure on Pine Island.
That's correct. It would relieve pressure from Pine Island. How much, I don't know, but it would definitely improve things from where it is today.
Okay.
Right now, the water has a great deal of difficulty getting there. I can tell you from my youth that that used to be much more difficult to get across those ditches. I might have done that a time or two.
Does somebody else have a question for me? Can you go a little bit more detail on what y'all be doing and your plan towards drainage? A little bit more detail, explain with the retention, all that.
Yes. First of all, I completely concur with everything John said. I completely concur with what you said. The idea that the water is getting blocked up and is not getting to the west. If I may, even the FEMA flood maps, the latest FEMA flood maps show this. The area where the flooding's occurring, the elevation's 3.5, 3.6 for the 100-year flood elevation. The area where we're trying to get the water to, the 100-year flood elevation, is 1.7. That's almost a 2-foot difference. So the engineers that have looked at this are all on the same page. So to answer your question, what we're proposing to do right out of the blocks is commence with some topographic data. We need topographic data on all these ditches and roads, etc. Mr. Domena has agreed to have us do that. Then we will sit down with the county engineers and also the St. Johns River Water Management District. They have a stake in this. We will sit down with them, we'll review the data, we'll analyze it together, and I believe out of that we're going to see some very definitive things that can be done right away to help alleviate the situation immediately. And then along with that, I also believe that as the actual subdivision project develops, there will be other things that we can accomplish so that ultimately we will have a positive drainage outfall system, publicly owned and maintained in tracks with maintenance access next to it where you can get to it, etc., none of which exists today. So I really see a two-pronged approach. Number one, we're going to do the analysis, both topographic and engineering-wise, early on to see what we can do immediately or as soon as possible. Again, in conjunction with your engineers and the St. Johns River Water Management District. And then number two, we're going to permanently establish that positive drainage outfall system through Mr. Domena's land so that hopefully the project's fixed forever, or the problem is locally here. I'm not talking about all the drainage on North Merritt Island, but this local flooding problem that's occurring. We think we can work to fix that to where we're not relying on pumps, we're not relying on private folks. We have a public maintained outfall system.
You're going to, are you done? I've got a line to go to. You're going to fix the existing drainage problem from what I'm hearing. You're going to do that on your own dime?
We are going to investigate it and do everything within our power. I can't tell you exactly what we're going to do because I don't have the data.
Okay.
But my client has committed to hiring us to do the topo, sit down with the county engineers, figure out what can be done. I think there's a high likelihood that we can improve the drainage system right away. I can't stand here and guarantee you that without all the data and without a St. Johns River Water Management District permit in my hand, but I can tell you that I think there's a high likelihood that we're going to be able to improve the situation.
Okay, and you're going to pay for it?
Yes.
Okay. You're bringing in sewer lines, we're not doing septic?
Correct.
So you're going to be hooking that up to sewer?
And if I may, that force main is not only for, that force main will have excess capacity beyond what we need.
Okay.
So that other
be able to hook
properties
others
will be able to hook up
to it.
It's not just a force main exclusively for our capacity.
Okay, that's a big deal. And then after you do all this, it's going to belong to the county, the sewer lines? That question came up.
Yes,
Okay. So that you'll put it in and then we'll be maintaining it?
yes. That's the way it's normally done. That's not anything special. That's the way your utilities department would want it.
Okay. For what I'm looking for with these items, up in our area, we have a lot of problems with drainage problems right now. We just had a big drainage meeting, as a matter of fact, with all the existing areas. So, I mean, it's a county-wide issue, but that it can't stop us being able to develop wisely so we can help take care of a lot of these water problems. And when I find a project that's willing to do that, I actually get very excited about it. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Did you?
I have a quick question. And maybe this is a moot point now, because you already said he'd be willing once you get the information back. But if the recommendation comes back, and I see you've got some areas on here for retention, would you be willing, or do you believe that he'll be willing to allow for more retention ponds if necessary on the property? I mean, I know there's a couple of existing. It's difficult to tell from the map, but...
In general, I would say yes. If that's part of the solution, then
Right.
we would be willing to look at those things. I'm not 100% sure that those additional lakes are the answer in this particular case, as opposed to a positive drainage outfall ditch that moves that water.
Oh, I know that's a
to
much
the
bigger
lagoon.
area, but I'm just
Yes.
looking at this map, and I see that there's an area here for a stormwater pond that doesn't look like there's an existing one, so I'm assuming that's part of the plan.
Yes, there's existing lakes on the property. We expect there to be more.
Because I
when-
like that
when it's
you're
done.
preserving some of that area, too, because I know that
Yes.
was some of the concern of the residents, so the surrounding residents, so, all right, thank you.
And that's all the lights. Commissioner Barfield?
And Mr.
Your
Mayor,
light's not working.
I didn't push it, I guess.
Oh,
Just, I want to ask you, just so, I know we talked about the sewer being run up there. What all's involved in that? I mean, how far of a distance is it? I mean, what is it y'all are putting into this to do that? You see-
I believe it's over a mile of sewer. I should have that number in my head, and I don't, but I believe it's roughly a mile of sewer. That's off-site up North Courtney Parkway, and then for about a tenth of a mile along North Tropical Trail to our entrance. We'll then have to build an on-site lift station, at least one, to pump our gravity lines that'll be in the subdivision into that force main and down to the plant. We also will be required, the force main that y'all just installed up to Church Road comes with a special assessment, if you will. We have to pay into that to pay for our fair share portion of that section of the line as well.
Okay.
Commission, what's your pleasure?
Discussion?
I don't have any more lights. Have a motion?
I got to think this through, how I'm going to say it. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and make the motion to approve. And the reason I'm saying this is I think this is a great opportunity.
Mike. Sorry.
Well, I was talking to myself. But I am going to make the motion to approve, and the reason I am is, number one, as everyone knows, I'm very specific that no developments go in unless we have sewer, and they're doing that, and they're footing the bill for that. The other side of it is this, that I've been in that area, I've walked that area, with John Denninghoff, we've been there, and that area appears to be the area that's causing a lot of the flooding, and there's a way to fix that. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with this study, to get the study done, and we need to look at doing our side of the study before that small area study is done. That's too many studies there, but before that gets done. I think it's important we get that data into that. So that I'm going to make a motion to approve to limit to 1 unit per acre. That includes extending the sewer, which is no septic, and improve the drainage with the BDP.
I have a motion. Commissioner Smith, your light's on. Are you making a second?
I will second that, and I also want to disclose that I've spoken to Mr. Jack Kirschenbaum on the phone about this project also.
I thought I disclosed, but I'll make sure. I spoke to the group of them, came in and talked to me and showed me all this, and so I've been exposed to it too.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. And I also, we had one come up recently, and they weren't going to bring in the sewer lines, and I didn't vote in approval for that either. And as far as density, I think an acre a lot is good if you're hooked onto a sewer system. Don't talk from out there, I'm sorry, you just can't. We've heard you, and we're just going to have to make comments now so you understand why we're making the comments we're making, the reason why we're voting how we are. So it's beautiful property out there, and if we're able to fix a drainage problem that exists and bring in sewer to connect these lines, and that's important to me, that we get as much septic off of these areas close by the river, and you're paying for it. So I think that's a pretty good path we have on this project, so thank you. And I will call the vote. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes 4-0. Thank you. Thank you. We are moving into, I have no public comments. We are moving into board reports. County Manager.
Commissioners, I have 2 items. The first, last week, Natural Resources received notification that 5 flood mitigation flood-prone property acquisition projects they have been working on are going to be eligible for submittal to the Florida Department of Emergency Management for available hazard mitigation grant program funds. That hazard mitigation grant program provides a 75% cost share with a 25% local match being required. Our local match for these projects can come primarily from stormwater funds. The proposed CIP for 2018, fiscal year 2018-2019, contains funds to cover the local match that would be required for 3 of these 5 eligible projects. The applications for these grants are due by August 6th, and it requires the board chair's signature. So staff is requesting the board authorize the chair to sign these grant applications so we can get them in by August 6th. Typically, the Florida Department of Emergency Management review process takes somewhere between 12 and 18 months to complete. During this time period, staff's going to address any needed budget requests and bring them to the board for consideration at some future date as the funding that's going to be needed for the remaining projects related to these grants can move forward as they're approved by the Florida Department of Emergency Management. So if we could get a motion from the board to give the chair the authority to sign it on behalf of the board, we would appreciate that.
Commissioner Barfield.
Yes, can you at least discuss areas that we're talking about?
Yeah, there's 5. One is a West Cocoa flood-prone property acquisition. A second is a mud lake acquisition for the West Cocoa drainage improvements. The third is on the North Merritt Island, Church, Horseshoe, and Crisafulli areas. The fourth is a Legay, and that's in District 2, and then Silver Pines. So those are the 5 project areas.
Okay, I'll make a motion that we authorize the chairman to sign.
Motion, do I have a second?
Second.
Second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes 4-0.
And I have one more item, and that's that we do not have a topic assigned for the August 16th board workshop, so I would request the board, if they so choose, to go ahead and cancel that workshop.
Have a motion to cancel the workshop?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Isnardi. All in favor say aye. Aye. Passes 4-0. Ms. Bentley?
No report.
Thank you. Commissioner Barfield?
Yes, we were talking about the small area study, and I would like to go ahead and make a motion that we go ahead and do the water study, the drainage study beforehand, to get into that study, just as we were talking about.
Yes, sir. We'll incorporate that in there. We'll let the other departments know that that's been requested, and we'll get it going.
Do I need to do a motion on that?
Help me with that. That means we're going to study where the water's going before they bring the report.
They're going to do all that beforehand. They'll go into this, once it's all done, they'll go into the small area study.
Okay.
Just to clarify, that's before we bring the study to you.
Correct.
Okay.
I have a question on
Just
cost.
for clarification purposes right now, I don't know what the cost of that study will be. I know we had put some sort of estimates on it. I don't recall what it was.
300,000?
For the small area study?
I'm skeptical that 300,000 is
Come
enough
back
to
with an
take care of
estimate,
the
let us
issue. But then we've got to come up with a source of the revenue for that as well. So we would probably need to come back to the board with necessary information so that you'd know.
Come back with a firm estimate.
Yeah.
Did I say that out loud? And then we would incorporate those results into the study itself, and then so have another committee meeting. Okay.
Do you have anything else, Commissioner? Do you have anything else?
No, that, no report.
Okay. Commissioner Smith?
I'm assuming that Myra would pay for that study?
We don't know yet. It wouldn't be Myra. They're going to come back with an estimate. We'll figure out then where it
Correct.
comes out.
It's actually,
It's
the
not in the
area
Myra
of
district.
interest is outside of the Myra
okay.
boundaries, so I don't think they would be able to fund it.
I have no report.
Thank you. Commissioner Isnardi?
Just apologize to my fellow commissioners. Yeah, about 95, had 2 lanes closed, and then I was going to hop back on an O'Galley, and I'm glad I have a fancy navigation system now that told me that there again, there was another accident. So I was stuck taking Minton from Palm Bay to Wickham all the way down to here. So it took me a lot longer to get here, and that was leaving early, so I apologize for me being tardy today.
We're glad you're safe.
I'm just going to leave, I'm just going to make sure I'm here in the area in the morning, and that way it never happens again.
Well, I'm surprised the other 2 commissioners didn't mention this, but we got to go to the ribbon cutting for the Viera soccer fields.
Regional Park.
It was, I have everybody help me up here. I'll just let them jump in with their mics. All the children that were present and everybody that participated in that, the excitement was wonderful. USSSA was there. They said 25,000 more hotel rooms. And the tourist dollars that's coming out of the USSSA, I'm telling you guys, it's good. And we're seeing it increase and increase, and these are good tourist dollars that are coming to our area, and it's affecting the whole district. Just a note on that, we had a group, I guess, staying in one of our hotels up the interstate, and they flooded the restaurant, and they were playing in the USSSA tournament up here. So we're getting it now in District 1, too, and it's just appreciate it so much. So that's my report, and at that, I'll call this meeting adjourned.
The opinions expressed by any member of the public during any period of public comment do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of the Board of County Commissioners of Brevard County, Florida, Space Coast Government Television, or the program sponsor, and are solely those of the presenter. The Board of County Commissioners of Brevard County, Florida, Space Coast Government Television, and the program sponsor hereby expressly disclaim any and all responsibility or liability for any defamatory or slanderous statements expressed by any member of the public during any such period.